You've probably heard this before. Young people these days aren't motivated to work. But is that true? What's driving the way that Gen Z thinks about work? And what does it take for both employees and employers to make work work? Welcome back to the Work It podcast. My name is Nat, and today we're going to be unpacking what really motivates Gen Z in the workplace. Joining me today are Ashlee Low, a 22-year-old who's just getting her first taste of the working world through her internship.
Hello.
And we also have her boss, Kelvin Kao, our columnist from CNA Today, who is writing an article on motivating Gen Zs. Hi, Kelvin.
Hello.
So, Ashlee, let's start with you. When you hear people say what I said earlier, young people, they don't want to work, they're not motivated, how do you feel about that?
I feel like it's not true
Okay.
to a certain extent. I mean, when we start out in the workforce, I feel most of my peers were quite excited because we're getting paid for something that we do for free in school, basically. And of course, it's nice to get your name in real life projects and doing things that actually exist out in the open for everybody to look at, rather than, in school we just do projects and that's only for our viewing.
I can imagine, yeah. Kelvin, you've managed a lot of people over the years, right? You've been running your business for 15 years?
15 years. Actually, one of the guilty pleasures I've had is seeing millennials whom I managed maybe earlier on when I started the company, sort of having that same perspective towards their Gen Z, subordinates in the workplace.
They're becoming the boomers.
Right, because I think reality is everyone thinks we are smarter than, our previous generation, but wiser than the next, right? So I just see the evolution as we go along. To me, people tend to be the same. So kind of supporting Ashlee's point, like painting such a broad stroke isn't helpful. Are there observable differences? I do think there might be some,
right?
But not without reason.
Yeah. Okay, so let's unpack some of those differences that you've observed. Could you give us some examples, I guess?
I'm Gen X, so officially Gen X. Speaking of Gen X, when we started, we were known as the slacker generation. That was our branding, so to speak, right? So we definitely resonate, or at least can understand this sort of branding also when it comes to representing the entire generation. But I think the observable one is that oftentimes when we enter the workplace, we have to prove ourselves to get to a certain position, maybe a certain pay. I think the inverse is kind of true right now, where companies have to offer that position, offer perhaps a certain pay scale,
right,
for them to sort of live up to that level of performance. So it's just sort of flipped around a little.
Right.
Yeah. The expectations.
The playing field has kind of been leveled between employees and employers.
Yeah.
So companies now have to prove themselves as a worthy place for employees to plant roots.
Very much so. Yeah.
Okay. So what kind of effect is that having on managers, do you think?
Right.
Because we've always heard that the most important people are your middle management, team leaders. So is that putting a lot of work on them?
It's a lot of pressure. I think especially for middle managers, they now have to manage up, right? Which is always the case, right? I mean, where I came from in my era, sort of making sure your bosses are, accounted for, and you do work that's pleasing to them. I think that's important. But now the managing downwards is even more true, because you then have to be mindful of their temperament, their state of mind, their workload, and be much more involved at that front.
Yeah.
Which again is not necessarily a bad thing, but it puts a lot more pressure on the sandwich sort of segment. Yeah.
Right. So what happened that led to this kind of flip script?
The landscape in terms of hiring has been very different right now with employers, right? Where you see a lot more layoffs, both at the MNC level, and actually even SMEs, which means the loyalty that perhaps we used to enjoy back in the 90s, maybe even 2000s up to the financial crisis, right? Where if you enter a job, you probably are expected to stay in that job unless you decide to move on, right?
Yeah.
Whereas these days, I think the employer tends to initiate the layoffs, the firings. I think I mentioned MNCs, but even at the SME level, which is my company, we've had to post-COVID also do layoffs. And one of the toughest conversations I had was actually having to lay off someone that was really loyal and committed to the company. So if that already happens, then you can imagine the cynicism, the sense of, you know what, we're all in this for our own self-interest.
Ashlee, do you agree with, how Kelvin put it? Or I guess, on a scale of 1 to 10, how loyal are you to Kelvin's company?
I mean, I'm an intern right now. I think this is like quite difficult for me to understand as well. I think for many Gen Zs, because when we are just starting out to work, or most of our work experience is like internships and these like short-term gigs, we always know that there's an end date. If you have an internship that you really don't like, then you can count down to the day when it ends, which I understand when you start working like full-time.
Right.
Then there's no end date, which then starts to get a bit scary, I think, for many Gen Zs. Because you feel like you're in this kind of like floaty space. Like you don't know when it's gonna end.
The work never ends.
Yeah, the work never ends.
There's no holidays to look forward to.
Yeah. And I think with like layoffs, when we watch people get laid off, for example, we would much prefer that we leave on our own terms and we quit instead of being laid off.
Right.
But also being young, I cannot imagine like being laid off or like being like retrenched, because it almost feels like I don't think I'm going to be there long enough to be retrenched.
To your first point earlier, where it's kind of scary to not be able to see down the end of that very dark tunnel when you enter a full-time job. To older generations, perhaps, that sounds like the dream. That sounds like job stability. So why is it so different for your generation?
For creative like myself, I think it's much more fulfilling for me to try a lot of different things and then build up my skill. And when I feel like I've reached a point where I am confident enough to have a full-time job where I can contribute like consistently and like really have personal fulfillment, but also really contribute to the team in a way that is productive to everybody. Like I don't feel like I don't feel like my work is the slack that somebody has to like help pick up, which is where I feel I'm still kind of at right now. And I think many Gen Zs feel in the first couple of years when they start to work. So it feels like
you're still sort of discovering your own strengths.
Discovering it, and then also seeing whether that place is like a great fit for me, where I can like learn, but also am still confident to be in and happy.
So you kind of don't want to lock in on this one set career or job, because you want that opportunity to explore other options.
When we see on social media, there are many Gen Zs that are like starting out their own businesses, or they have a full-time job and they do something on the side, which is like maybe their actual passion, and then they end up transitioning into that. So I think for me also, I'm like seeing maybe there is that opportunity for my passion to manifest in something outside of what I'm doing in school.
But Kelvin, you laughed earlier when Ashlee mentioned social media.
Yeah.
Is there a reason?
I think it's again, when we spoke about observable differences, right? I think like social media creates a lot of pressure, like the fear of missing out, and the reality or the idea that somebody's life is better than yours. So you're constantly chasing something better. Not that it isn't a good thing. Actually, what you said about like pursuing your passions on the side, if I were to redo my time again, I would like explore that in greater detail or with more effort, because it just wasn't a thing. You just land a job and then you try and stay. Again, our stints perhaps for first jobs anecdotally were like 3 years, 4 years. Some of my friends stayed 6, 7 years. And so that I think is just a mindset shift as well, right? Where she is building her portfolio, discovering herself. We want an anchoring sort of job for the start of our careers.
For the millennial managers today, or any manager today, how can they then build that trust with their employees if there's no longer this bait or this attraction in the fact that your job is stable, your job is assured like there was before?
I think a good manager is honest with, across the board, right? With feedback, with the stability or lack of, their lack of, right, when it comes to a career. It is really tough. I think I've seen really good like managers, both in my company and elsewhere, like really struggle to navigate, especially post-COVID, where the company might be going through a lot of challenges, like how to communicate it when actually their own jobs are also on the line, right? So I think the ones that have done well, they are very candid about the situation, but yet also have the mindset of, okay, since we are here, let's do the best we can, and give our best shot. If the cards land however they may, then we will recalibrate from there.
Right.
And that's just how they cope.
Authenticity will really matter to employees. Actually, I understand that despite being 22, you've already had definitely much more work experience than I had at your age. Do you find this to be true, that bit about authenticity and managers who I guess see you as people?
Yeah, I actually think that's quite a big thing. When coming in, especially as an intern, I think many people in the company where I've worked before, they'll be like, oh, this is the intern, whatever you don't want to do, you get the intern to do it, that sort of thing, which I understand. I mean, the full-timers have more important things to do, but when it starts to make me feel like maybe I'm not really part of the team, I'm just like this short-term like help, which yes, I am, but
just a hired hand, you know. Yeah.
But like as much as I'm here, I want to feel like I'm part of the team. And then when I get the same treatment as all the other full-timers get, then I'll feel like, okay, maybe this is somewhere where I would want to continue like working and exploring, starting my first like full-time job. I would much rather feel like I'm working with a bunch of friends, very capable friends, and we're working on a project together. And with that kind of mindset, then we'll strive to do something much better. Then I'm just the intern to like do something that everybody doesn't want to do.
Right. That's interesting though, because a few episodes ago, we talked to a Gen Z colleague of mine, where one of the things that he said that stayed with me is that he would like for workplaces to have better vibes. And that's essentially what you're saying, right?
I think Gen Z wants an enjoyable workplace, and Gen Z likes, like we are very social, so we are very affected by like social interactions and so on. So if there are nice people to be around in the office, which obviously sometimes you can't control, but it's always nice to have. And work is work. So when things have to be done, yeah, we can do it. But when it's lunch, things can turn off. It can start to feel a bit more comfortable and like homey, like a bunch of friends having lunch instead of like, this is my boss and my manager and we have to like speak formally.
Did you have that kind of experience before, or is this something that you're still looking for?
Yeah, I've had that.
Okay.
My very first internship, my mentor, we actually like became friends.
Okay.
And so it was really enjoyable working there. And at that time, I was doing a role where I wasn't very confident in. But, like my first day, I had to like Photoshop something and I really didn't know how. And he stayed till like 8 p.m. to teach me.
Wow.
And he wasn't like upset about it or anything. And like he was very supportive in like helping me learn. And up till now, we are still friends. And even my freelance gig I did, even though it's like a short stint, but on my first day, my boss, and it was like a big boss who's very busy, he actually brought me and another new hire out for lunch and we talked nothing about work. We just talked about like our interests and things like that. And we ended up having many shared interests, which then became talking points along the course of my time there.
One of the phrases or the words that we're hearing a lot now in the working world is engagement, because we're hearing that Singaporeans are among the least engaged workers in the region. So, Kelvin, when we're talking about engagement, some people think team bonding, office perks, foosball tables, wellness programs. In your experience, what actually gets people engaged at work?
So I think for a manager or a boss, it's really finding the sweet spot between analyzing their aptitude, their ability, and then providing the right opportunity for them to shine.
Right.
I think oftentimes when we see that you provide junior staff, new hires, Gen Zs, the opportunity to really take on responsibility, a lot of them rise to the occasion. For me, it has always been fascinating finding that balance. But I feel like when you set them up for success, I think that works. So that's on the job itself. Now, in terms of perks elsewhere, right, I think it can take on different forms. You have mentioned actually many of the things that we have tried, legitimately like foosball table, outings, company retreats, and various mental wellness days, community days. So I think ultimately it's sending a signal that you care for the employees. They are more than just a hired hand. But culture is not just policy. I think it really comes down to how you treat them in conversation, in times of conflict, of disagreement. Whether you speak to them with contempt or with care. I think these are all sort of the softer side of how we interact with one another.
Right. I'm just thinking out loud, right? Is that putting a lot of work on the managers to bring out in this employee? At what point does it become that employee's responsibility to just get good at what they are paid to do?
Right. I think it's not easy being a manager these days. Part of it is trusting. When I talk to my team leads or managers, I think a lot of times they have difficulties letting go of what's on their plate, trusting their juniors with some of the work, and there might be a process where coaching or teaching them might actually take more effort than doing the work itself, which is the reality of how it goes, right? But over time, you will see that payoff, I think. And so that's one, the ability to delegate and seeing that come to pass. And the other side of it is actually, perhaps because I'm getting, slightly older, I do enjoy seeing young people flourish and grow in their time here. Right. I will always remember how they started, the projects they handle, the work they produce, and then at the end of their journey, this is what you have done. These are your accomplishments, and all credit to them. But it was great to be part of that journey too.
Ashlee, what's your take on that? Do you feel like Kelvin lives up to his word in the workplace? Very long pause.
I'm thinking about it. Yeah, I say so. I feel like you do give opportunities to people and try to see the best in them when they first come in. Although Gen Zs are generalized to be a certain way, it's still nice to know that your manager or boss is optimistic about you, even though you're a Gen Z and this is your first job.
I'm just recalling one conversation we had quite recently, right, where Ashlee actually did really well. We exposed her a little bit beyond what her official role was. And then I said, these are areas you could grow in. And she responded well. I did this part. I must say it was interesting also that very shortly after that conversation, you did come to me with a request for a pay increment and stuff like that. So I think it's a nice analogy to a metaphor for the conversation, right? Opportunity based on aptitude, but they also expect to get rewarded for it.
Yeah. So nothing comes free. If you want more work to be done from me, you need to remunerate me accordingly.
Yes. Which is an interesting shift because for me, at the internship, more responsibility would be, I would just celebrate that, honestly.
Because it's experience under your toolbar,
experience, it's brands under my portfolio, but why not both? It doesn't need to be mutually exclusive. It's just one of those things that doesn't cross your mind at that age or at that generation, right?
So definitely a lot that we could learn from Gen Z, you know. But thank you both so much for your time joining me on the Work It podcast. And for all of you At home, watching, or on your commute or wherever you are, if you want to read Kelvin's article, it will be out this weekend. You just have to head over to channelnewsasia.com/today. But we would also love to hear from you. What's one thing that motivates you to do your best work? Write to us at cnapodcast@mediacorp.com.sg or just comment wherever you're listening to the Work It podcast. My name's Nat, and remember, you can't demand motivation, but you can certainly build it.